Well, there's no easy way to say it, kid. God hates us.
Hey, since when is Christmas just about the presents? Aren't we forgetting the true meaning of this day? The birth of Santa?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Springfield Googleplex, the movie podcast for Simpson fans, brought to you by thatshelf.com. Every episode, we talk about a movie parodied on The Simpsons. Maybe it was The Simpsons that introduced us to the film, or maybe when we finally saw it, we realized, hey, that's where that Simpson joke came from. Regardless, each week we pick one that one of us hasn't seen or hasn't seen in a while, watch it, and come together to discuss. I'm your host, Adam Scholes, and joining me as always is the security blanket to my Linus, my co-host, Nate Storing. How are you today, buddy?
I'm pretty good. I'm just getting over a cold, so hopefully I'm not too, congested and scratchy sounding, but otherwise pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you sound fine.
Okay.
And it's funny because we're recording our Christmas special at the beginning of June. So it's the least Christmassy Christmas special, I think. Although I think this is pretty common for like how they actually make Christmas specials. They do them way in advance. But you can't really see, but I did put up a few Christmas lights behind me here. So, just to get us in the Christmas spirit. But this week we have a very special guest joining us. He's a senior staff writer at The Ringer and the author of a brand new book on The Simpsons called Stupid TV, Be More Funny. It's Alan Siegel. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. I was going to say that I'm adding to the non-Christmas theme because my last name is Siegel, so I think you could figure out, how much Christmas I've celebrated over the years.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is really exciting. We both got copies of your book. I feel very special and elite. This is, getting to read stuff in advance. This is very cool. But
I've been staying up very late reading the book. It's way past my bedtime. I sit down in my bed and I read a chapter, and then I'm like, I could just read one more chapter maybe. So it's been a good read. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys. It reminds me of reading the episode guide, the official episode guide in the late 90s. I'm 42, so I remember when that came out. It might have been 97, 98. We would stay up at summer camp and read it to each other, which is the most cliche thing of all time, but I don't care.
Wait, what you can't see is Alan is vamping because Adam just walked off screen to go get his copy of it.
To go get my copy of the episode guide. I actually have. So this is my second copy. My dad bought me the original one from Costco. Then one Christmas they gave me this box set because it was updated. I think the original one only goes to season 11, and then they put out 2 supplements. So that was in the box set. And then when I was in university, my mother-in-law, though she wasn't my mother-in-law at the time, bought me the big, which is also behind me, the big 20th anniversary edition. So I've got multiple copies of these.
Yeah, I've got the big red book.
But yeah, no, I'm the same way, Alan. I literally would just stay up late. Between Calvin and Hobbes and the Simpsons episode guide, that was sort of my bedtime reading, which probably explains why I'm as poorly read as I am today.
So, okay, again, I'm in my early 40s, but do you know anybody who used to tape the show on VHS?
Yeah, you're talking to someone who did that.
Guy.
for context, Alan, so Nate and I both grew up in Canada. I still live in Canada, and Nate lives in the U.S. And up here, when we were teenagers, there were 3 or 4 local channels that would basically run 1 to 2 hour blocks of Simpson reruns. And so I just had my VCR set to tape all of these things. And so I have multiple 8-hour VHSs at my parents' house that are just random episodes of The Simpsons. And then obviously the DVDs came along and sort of supplanted all those. But there's a handful of episodes that I know the back of my hand because those were the ones I taped off a TV and watched over and over and over and over.
My friend Paul, who is even a little older, kept his tapes, and he is an assistant principal, and he used to lend them to his students. And one time he did that, awesome. And he never got it back. And that's it's like losing your favorite dog-eared paperback. That's what we had.
That's pretty cool. Well, enough memory lane. We should probably talk about what we're actually going to talk about today. So this week we watched for our Christmas special a Charlie Brown Christmas, the very first Peanuts holiday special, which believe it or not, celebrates its 60th anniversary this year, which is hard to believe, although maybe not so hard when you actually watch it. But you might remember it from such Simpson episodes as Season 1's Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, Season 5's Treehouse of Horror 4, or The Boy Who Knew Too Much, indirectly, Season 7's Marge Be Not Proud, Season 8's Grade School Confidential, Season 9's Lisa's Sax, indirectly, and Miracle on Evergreen Terrace, Season 10's Treehouse of Horror 9, Sunday Cruddy Sunday, and Marge Simpson in Screaming Yellow Honkers, Season 12's The Computer Wore Menace Shoes and HOMR, and Season 13's A Hunka Hunka Burns in Love and The Blunder Years. So this is one of those things that has been parodied quite a bit on the show.
And to be fair, we also, anytime there was like a general Charlie Brown reference, we gave it to this because this is the very first sort of like feature, more or less, that references Charlie Brown, right? And so there are a couple things that other references to Charlie Brown that weren't included in that list. Like, for example, there's no, the teacher talking sound that doesn't appear in this special, right? So we didn't include that on the list. But any other time you just had like there's one episode where there's like a candle that's like shaped like Charlie Brown and just burning. Yes. Like that gets credited to this movie too.
Okay, interesting. Special. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we'll get into it, but this special sort of establishes so much of the, I guess, for lack of a better term, iconography of what people think of when it comes to Charlie Brown, at least animated Charlie Brown, that kind of makes sense. Alan, we've already sort of alluded to the fact that you've written this book. A lot has been written over the years. Lots of ink has been spilled when it comes to The Simpsons. And yet, much like ourselves, you wanted to spill more. What did you feel like... What did you feel hadn't been said about The Simpsons that led you to write this book?
So by now, like almost 40 years in, it's really an institution, an American institution or a global institution. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the discussion about the show kind of, again, the tributes are real and the show has continued to be pretty good, but I think it kind of ignores or doesn't drill down enough into the core time of when the show was at its best in like the 90s. And again, I think people forget how edgy the show was and how groundbreaking, all the cliches, but I really wanted to drill down into that era and what made it good. And I mean, the hope is to sort of be definitive without being completist, because again, the show, 800 episodes in, I think it'd be impossible to cover everything. And that's not a knock on the later parts of the show. It's just, I don't think you can argue that the first, 7 to 10 years, however long you want to define the golden era is, like it's the best.
Well, and not only that, it so defines, or I guess maybe define. No, define is kind of the right word. It sort of redefines what animation can be. And, you talk about this in the first chapter about how like the writers sort of saw animation as like the last animation sitcom was like the Flintstones and like this very sort of like quaint era of what animation was. And this show redefines all of that. And of course, without that, then you don't get Futurama, Family Guy, Bob's Burgers. Like all of these things that are just so ubiquitous now don't exist without The Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean, maybe no adult animation would exist.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even go as far as like every archetypal sort of oafish character wouldn't exist without The Simpsons. I mean, I realize like The Simpsons sort of drew on all these influences as well, but I had an argument with a friend once, and he, we were sort of arguing like Sopranos and Simpsons, and he was like, "Did anybody ever talk about The Simpsons around the water cooler?" And I was like, I mean, yeah, first of all, yes, but second of all, like it kind of changed the way we talked around the water cooler. Like it sort of seeped into our consciousness in a way that I don't think any other show has. I mean, you could certainly argue that like the prestige dramas were as good as The Simpsons, but just in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big difference is just the way that it became part of the language, right? Like just, I mean, again, this is almost a cliche now too, but just like so many words, so many phrases from The Simpsons. Like my wife doesn't watch The Simpsons. She says things from The Simpsons, right? Because it's just that ubiquitous in the culture since the 90s. But one of the things that I feel like reading your book as well struck me is it's really almost like an oral history of The Simpsons. Like if you like those oral history articles that pop up every once in a while, like the oral history of this movie or that movie. Like this really feels like that. There's so much in the words themselves of the writers in the book, which I really love, of course.
Yeah, all those guys. So I've done a bunch of oral histories at the Ringer, which is fun. But I mean, I feel like the writers of the show specifically are so funny and so smart that sometimes I would be listening to them talk and every single thing they said would make me think or laugh. And it was really hard not to overuse quotes. And so I'm kind of glad I put a lot of it in their voice. I mean, it was rare, and this sort of gets at something we're sort of circling, which is like it was a very writer-driven show. Yeah. Which for animation was incredibly rare, like didn't exist. And, you know, the writers, one writer told me that like he would go out for jobs after The Simpsons and he'd have to be like, okay, is this storyboard driven or is it, you know, writer's room driven? And a lot of times people would look at him like crazy because they didn't, a lot of the knockoffs of The Simpsons that came out in the immediate aftermath, like Fish Police and Capital Critters, like they didn't quite get what that made the show great, which again is incredible animation and incredible writing.
Totally. It's interesting, you know, so the first chapter of the book is called Smashing the Snow Globe, and I immediately, what came to mind was Citizen Kane, you know, a film that has, you know, gotten a lot of juice on The Simpsons. But you meant something else. Can you sort of explain what that means?
Yeah, so again, I think I sort of got this before I started the book, but it really kept getting hammered to me over and over, which is the writers, sort of led by Sam Simon, who ran the show in the first couple of years, they were really obsessed with doing episodes that you couldn't do on live action TV. So the Snow Globe basically of sitcoms was just this little bubble. Like think about one of the best sitcoms of all time, Cheers. Yeah. It's kind of the exception that proves the rule, right? So it takes place in the bar, barely any other place, and it's hysterical, but it's also very limiting. And when you have animation, like that's how you separate yourself from other shows, is like you have Homer jump Springfield Gorge, right? Like you don't, you know, you don't limit it, and then you beat the shit out of him when he's doing it. So that's sort of that's what they wanted to do. I think Sam and Simon basically said at one point, I want every episode to be different than the last one, which is impossible after a while. But at the beginning, it did feel like that.
Yeah. You used the word stage bound in the book, which I thought was like perfect to describe like other sitcoms. They're literally stage bound. And that's what The Simpsons, I think, quickly realized they didn't have to be, right?
Yeah. And George Meyer, who is another, I mean, why am I clarifying that? Of course, you guys know that. But he was just sort of saying like he once visited a sitcom and he kind of like looked up like at the lights. He's like, oh, that's why there's no ceiling in the shot. It's just this like really funny little observation that like is obvious, but he said it in a way that's very funny.
Yeah, connecting right back to Citizen Kane, actually.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too because like one of the things that it sort of becomes a hallmark of the show, and we actually did an entire series dedicated to it, was like the musical numbers. Like that's something that a regular sitcom, like, can you imagine if, I was going to say Frasier, but Frasier's maybe the exception to the rule. But going back to Cheers, like, could you imagine if, like, one of the episodes Sam just breaks out into a song? It would be like people would lose their minds. But for whatever reason, in animation, like, they can get away with that. And that becomes, again, this sort of, like, iconic hallmark of the show over the years.
There are songs that I didn't know were parodies of other songs, you know, like the...
Yep.
Frank Sinatra, you know, Homer singing about his fake ID. I didn't know what that was probably until I was 25
For me,
years old.
it's Help Me Dr. Zaius. I didn't realize that was a parody of Rock Me Amadeus, which there's again, we do a whole episode about the Planet of the Apes and the musical aspects of it, which if you haven't listened to is you know, we get into how I didn't know that it wasn't a musical, along with The Streetcar Named Desire didn't know wasn't a musical, and asked my dad to get me the cast recording, which was a very embarrassing moment.
Yeah, I'm counting down the days until Streetcar Named Desire does become a musical, because it feels like it these days it absolutely could be.
I mean, if Andrew Lloyd Webber can turn Sunset Boulevard into a musical, yeah, I guess anything is possible.
Exactly.
Like a jukebox musical of Streetcar Named
Exactly,
Desire.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is actually kind of a good segue to what another question I wanted to ask, which is, at one point in the book, you kind of describe The Simpsons as like being an older brother, which totally resonated with me. Like, my brother is 6 years older than me, so sort of an elder millennial. And I can remember in middle school him handing me like a Radiohead CD and being like, you should listen to this. And me being like, what the hell is this crap? And then like a couple years later being like, this is like my favorite CD, my favorite band in high school. Right. And so I do feel like The Simpsons absolutely plays that role. But I'm curious if there's any specific piece of pop culture or anything that The Simpsons kind of introduced to you like an older brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, but Hitchcock movies and Kubrick movies. And I remember hearing like Homer say, it's Chinatown Marge. And I was like, what does that mean? And so it was sort of like it's funny, these parallels. Like, people always talk about how like Nirvana got them into these other bands that like Kurt Cobain was into. It made you curious about things in a way that other sitcoms like just weren't as smart as The Simpsons. Like they didn't go and push you towards other interesting pieces of pop culture.
Or if they did, again, I think of Frasier. If they did, it was like in a sort of mocking sort of way. Like I learned a lot about fine art and food and opera from Frasier, but it was like I wasn't actually interested in checking that stuff out necessarily.
Well, it's like the level of specificity in The Simpsons is like unmatched, especially or maybe in the future, but in that time, like the like joke packing and reference packing was incredible.
Yeah. And I feel like, your book kind of, I feel like it's making the case, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that, in some ways The Simpsons is a show about TV, right? It's about like the history of television, and it's kind of curating and guiding the viewers about like what was good and what was bad about TV up to that point in time,
Yeah, you have like the smartest guys maybe not on Earth, but like of their generation who like watched, like Homer, like 40 hours of TV a week. And they're like machines. Like they processed all that shit together and turned it into something incredibly brilliant. I mean, the line that John Vitti said, which was like, I was asking about the Lampoon and like what made it such a breeding ground. And, you sort of expect like a treatise on how smart these guys are. But he's like, no, it was like where we procrastinated. It's where we watched the same Brady Bunch episode 12 times in a row and broke down what worked and what didn't. Like, it's like the ultimate sort of melding of like low culture and brains.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's funny. Again, we talk about my VHS collection of Simpsons and then my DVD collection. I think it's why we've talked on this show about how once those DVDs came out, I kind of stopped watching the show without the commentaries because I found the commentaries I'd seen the episode so many times that the commentary started giving me more insight into how television was made, how this show was made, the references that I wasn't catching. And I really just sort of took to these writers and found them so fascinating, such interesting characters. I just wanted to listen to them talk. I mean, this predates podcasting.
Right,
and,
the podcasts of their time.
Exactly. They really were. They were just these incredible, for nerds like me who were just kind of obsessed with how, like the machinations of how popular culture is created. Those commentaries became such like a wonderful way to absorb all of that.
I think like the commentaries almost in a way mimic like what the writer's room was like them sort of sitting around and just riffing on different things, except the commentaries I think were done with a little more joy because there were times in that writer's room where they were all just zonked. Like, it was a lot of sort of guys who didn't have kids yet. So they were able to like stay for many hours. But I think that to them, like the joy of it was not that process. It was more like the lunches that they got, but and they would have incredible, like explosive laughter, but I think again, spread out over 12-hour days.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that's like. Well, okay, let's get into the episode itself that we wanted to chat about. So obviously we had lots to choose from, and I quite foolishly thought we were talking about Simpsons roasting on an open fire and watched half of that episode before I realized, wait, no, we didn't pick that one. So today we're talking about Miracle on Evergreen Terrace, Season 9, Episode 11, directed by Bob Anderson, written by Ron Hauge, original air date December 21st, 1997, 32 years after the release of A Charlie Brown Christmas. And this is the Christmas episode in which Bart burns down the family Christmas tree and makes up a story to try and cover it up. So, Nate, talk us through the reference and what it is, why it is, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so it's a very small reference, to be fair. But I promise that it is confirmed on the commentary. So basically when the Simpson family, they go to the retirement castle to visit Grandpa, and he and his neighbors are just kind of dancing in the style of the Peanuts characters in this show.
Oh, the pharmaceutical man come by, and he shot us full of Christmas cheer.
I can't feel nothing below my chin.
It's like especially funny because it's not exactly like the dances from the special, right? There's like maybe one character that's doing exactly the dance, but it's so distinctively the Peanuts style of dancing. Mm-hmm. They're all just doing these kind of repetitive, weird movements that are not real dance moves.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then there are like some other things throughout this episode where I was like, that feels like influenced by A Charlie Brown Christmas. Like the whole beginning of the episode, right? Lisa's admiring that they don't have an aluminum tree, right? Which is like a plot point in this special as well. And to which Marge says, I couldn't agree more. From now on, it's plastic all the way. And then Bart tells the family that Christmas isn't about gifts. It's about the birth of Santa. Similar sort of vibe to this. And then at the very end, you actually hear Chief Wiggum humming Hark the Herald Angel Sings, which is how this special ends as well. So like, are those references? Probably not. But it's kind of all in the general fund of like, Christmas special culture at this point, I think.
Right. And then there's, like all great Simpson episodes, there's not just one movie reference or one TV show reference. There's some references to some other stuff. So what else do we get out of this episode?
Well, of course, the title is a reference to Miracle on 34th Street, right? You've also got a reference to It's a Wonderful Life, which I think we talked about in our It's a Wonderful Life episode.
Right.
But, it's the part where the town's like coming together to collect money for the Simpsons. And I think, Adam, it's one of your like all-time favorite lines for Mr. Burns in this scene.
Yep.
Does anyone have change for a button?
My favorite part of that scene is Homer yelling at Lisa.
Wow, this really restores your faith in... Lisa, do you have to practice that stupid song now?
Sorry, Daddy.
Yeah, which is like, it's a pitch perfect parody of that movie, because that actually does happen in the movie.
Snaps at him, yeah. His daughter, right? Yeah.
Another one that's kind of like, again, this is kind of in the general fund of culture. It's hard to say where it originates, but Bart says Jackie Gleason's favorite or famous catchphrase in this episode. He goes, "How sweet it is," right? That actually comes from a movie originally called Papa's Delicate Condition. That's the first time Jackie Gleason actually says that catchphrase. So there you go. Yeah, that's like a deep cut.
And then, as always, there are a few references that we're not entirely sure about. So I'll start us off, because I'm not convinced that this is intentional, but I couldn't help think about it when Homer is doing the lights and he falls off, and he falls off the roof, and just like the choice of what he's dealing with. I can't help but think of Chevy Chase in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Again, I don't know that it's because I don't even know that that's like the first movie that does like. Hapless dad can't put up Christmas lights, but it's just whenever I see it, that's what immediately comes to mind. But,
Right. Playing in the same sandbox for sure, but yeah, they don't really reference those movies, so it's like probably not. But you never know. You never know until you actually ask someone. I was wondering about so Bart's description of the burglar and how he has all these kind of elaborate like physical specificities. I was immediately thinking of The Fugitive, right?
Yeah, the one-armed man.
Right. So it's like, and they have referenced The Fugitive before, so I'm like, maybe, but hard to say for sure. The spinning newspaper and music sting. This is again one of those things that's like, it's kind of just a trope, but it probably originates somewhere. On the commentary at one point, I almost said podcast. On the commentary at one point, they do actually say, oh yeah, it's kind of like from James Cagney movies from the 1930s. So I'm like,
Okay.
at some point, I'd love to do a deep dive and like find the movie where that sort of trope starts. But anyway. And then lastly, again, hard to say, but the score in Bart's Water Dream, right? Often those moments of like where there's just like a short little music cue, it's a reference to something, but they're often the hardest references to pin down. So like, I really don't even know what that would be, but it was so distinctive that I was like, that could be a reference.
Like Apocalypse Now or something like that, like going
Right,
down,
exactly.
going down the river. I don't know. Maybe that's maybe a stretch. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's like a Last of the Mohicans thing, because I haven't seen that film, but like I know because they set things up with the like the he drinks the 12 glasses of water, which is what the Indians did. I was like, maybe it's a reference to, I don't know. But Alan, was there anything that you caught that felt like it might be a reference to something that we're just not grokking?
You guys are such pros with this stuff. I would really have to dig. I admit, I'm not sure.
Well, anything else you loved in the episode, though?
So, what struck me about this episode, and it is what I remember, it might be like a top 5 bleakest Simpsons episodes of all time. Like,
Yeah.
there are no real like, not even bittersweet beats until the very end, and that's even that isn't like, I'm sure we'll get there, but it definitely was not a heartwarming episode.
They're kind of into the like anti-Christmas special a little bit. Sometimes they end okay, but they're pretty dark.
This is the funny thing, though, because we talked, I can't remember if it was last season or the season before, but we talked about Marge Be Not Proud, which is the Bone Storm episode where Bart steals. And if you recall, Nate, I actually got very emotional talking about that episode because I find that episode very difficult to watch because it's so heartbreaking watching Bart break Marge's heart. And so, I don't tend to, when I'm, if I'm in the Christmas spirit and I'm watching a bunch of Christmas Simpson episodes, that's one that I usually skip because I just find it so gut-wrenching. Whereas this one, like, it is bleak, but it's also got so many great gags, and I think it's so funny and has like such an absurd ending that I don't find it difficult to watch, and I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, and the like comeuppance that the Simpsons get, and
yes,
it doesn't just end. Like it's maybe 5 minutes of them getting ridiculed, which
it's great.
I hadn't quite remembered that much.
Yeah,
right. That it doesn't ever actually resolve. It resolves very poorly for them.
Yeah.
Speaking of earlier, the way that the language has sort of infiltrated into everyday life. This episode has one of those words that I feel like I used all the time, which is craptacular. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely.
That comes from this one. We also get an eep and a yoink in this episode, of course.
Yeah, yoink. I said yoink to my son today because I yoinked one of his chicken nuggets at dinner, and he was...
How'd that go?
He didn't know what was going on, and then he chased. I ran out of the room, and then he chased after me. But I got to keep the chicken nuggets. So yeah, no, I mean, this also has several great kind of one of my favorite kind of jokes on the show, which is the fake out joke, where you think it's going one direction, it goes another direction. So there's the one where Milhouse gets hit by a snowball, and then you hear Marge shout Homer, like you think that it's Bart would have done it, but no, it's the grown adult. And then probably again, escalating it is when Lisa starts to choke Bart, which is just funny in and of itself. And then Homer goes, "Lisa, no, your hands are too weak." And then he starts choking him as well. It's just, it's, again, you could only get, to your point, Alan, you could only get away with this on an animated sitcom. Like, if this were a real sitcom and a dad started choking his son, you would be mortified.
So there's an Fox executive that I interviewed for the book who, I don't think this actually got into the book, but he talked about how like they would run these promos, these print promos, like in TV Guide,
right,
or local newspapers, and it would be Homer choking Bart, and he would be like, this exec told me, like, can you imagine like Carl Winslow choking Urkel? I know it's not his son, but like something like that,
or Tim the Toolman Taylor,
choking JTT or something like. Can you like? Like there would be protests. It would be crazy.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's nuts. I mean, granted, like, obviously the show in the 90s was considered very subversive and very controversial, Bart spoke back to his parents and stuff like that. But yeah, again, the fact that they still got away with some of that stuff, you in a way that, again, a regular live action show could never get away with that.
It was sort of, I feel like, it was always intended in the vein of Itchy and Scratchy, right? It's like the over-the-topness of cartoons and all of that. But like, when the rest of it is like an animated sitcom, it does stand out a bit in retrospect. It's not usually a cartoony show.
Well, it is funny because in the commentary, one of the commentaries, again, having listened to all of them many, many times, Matt Groening actually addresses this fact. And he basically says, Homer could never sort of consciously, premeditatively hurt Bart. It always had to happen in a fit of rage, and that made it okay because it was just like it was just this burst of rage, and then he would do it, and for whatever reason that almost made it funny. But they were like, there were fine lines that they had to tread of like, is this too cruel? Like, is this not okay? But
I mean, the scene that I mentioned before, not from when Homer jumps Springfield Gorge and the skateboard and falls, which is like a classic scene. But from what I heard, the early versions of that were like gory, like bloodier. Like I remember being scared and really disturbed when I was 8 watching that. Like it wasn't funny to my second grade self.
Well, this episode also ends with one of my favorite sort of Simpsons contained tropes, which is the family debating what the episode meant.
Yes, I do love when they do that.
Alan, I feel like you talk about this in the book a little bit. Like I think you trace it back to like Blood Feud, that episode with George Meyer.
Yeah, and I think Homer's sort of like, a bunch of stuff just happened, and there's no lesson here. And I think like again, the sort of like meta commentary of that episode, like that is another thing that the Simpsons really, of course, they didn't introduce it, but they really like made it pop in a way that mainstream sitcoms did not.
Right. Yeah. Well, and like, of course, it's playing off of the trope of pre-existing sitcoms having a moment at the end where everyone would be like, and now everything's wrapped up in a neat little package, and they explain what it all meant and blah blah blah.
Oh, it's like Full House used to do that all the time. Like every friggin' episode of Full House ended with like, now we're going to tell you the moral of the story and hit you over the head with it. And again, like that was the beauty of The Simpsons, was like when they're doing it, it's like very much tongue in cheek. It also, the episode also ends with this very bizarre, I guess it's a Christmas song, but it's like, it's old timey and very strange. And I couldn't help but wonder, I'm like, why are we ending with this?
Hooray, hooray, oh, hear the merry sleigh. Yes, Jack. Ding-a-ling, 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 Santa's on his way.
But Nate, you sort of did a little research into what that might have been.
I dug up what the song was. So it's called Santa's on His Way. It's by Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys. And apparently, Bob Wills was known as the king of Western swing. But this is apparently, it doesn't seem like it's one of his better known songs. It was the B-side on a single called When It's Christmas on the Range. And that was also not a popular song of his. So I'm like, I have no idea. My guess is that either one of the writers had like a personal connection to it, like they owned it on vinyl, or it could also be Matt Groening and his just like insane music taste. But yeah,
that's fair. I mean, as a connoisseur of Christmas music, I don't think we've ever discussed this, but for the better part of a decade, I would make a mix CD of Christmas music. But my whole thing was like, it's going to be songs that you aren't sick to death of. And that would sort of be, it started off as like a way to give people gifts when I was a broke student. And then it just became something that I kept doing. But this never made the cut. So, but maybe if I ever do it again, maybe I will. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the film, as it were. Alan, how would you sum up A Charlie Brown Christmas in a sentence?
It's a mood, it's really like an existential crisis of a small child. And the fact that, again, it aired on CBS, I believe, and, at probably 8 p.m. or prime time, and it's about a kid like realizing that Christmas is kind of bullshit, like consumerist. And there's just, it's a little bit like The Simpsons in that, The Simpsons was really this anti-consumerist show that sold millions of T-shirts. And Charlie Brown Christmas was, I believe, financed by Coca-Cola. So
Yes.
there is some hilarious irony, but you know what? They made it work.
Well, we dug up the plot synopsis from a very interesting source here. This comes from the 1991 Shell VHS, and that's not clamshell VHS, Shell the gas station. And this is how they describe the special. The Peanuts gang is getting ready for Christmas. Snoopy has decorated his doghouse with ornaments and lights. The rest of the kids are preparing for the school play, and everyone's in a great mood. Except Charlie Brown. He's wondering whether Christmas has become too commercial. Join Charlie Brown and his friends as they celebrate Christmas in the inimitable Peanuts style and learn the true meaning of the holiday.
Wild to see the word inimitable on the back of a VHS.
from a Shell gas station, no less.
Right. Yeah, I was like trying to figure out what the story was with this. I don't know, Alan, if you know anything about the Shell, like why Shell was selling this, but it was a totally random thing.
I just know that gas stations back 20, 30, 40 years ago would sell like oddly promotional. Like, I think we had a bunch of I got the right one, baby Diet Pepsi glasses from the mobile station in my hometown. I think they just did a lot more partnerships back then that were, I don't know, maybe back before oil companies were considered kind of negative.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know, it's a wonder Coca-Cola is the advertiser and not like Marlboro. Considering the era. But no, I think the Peanuts like home video rights and just like Peanuts has gone through a lot of weird ownership and like corporate sponsorship. Like, Nate, do you remember Peanuts had Canada's Wonderland, which is sort of like the one theme park in Canada, had a Peanuts tie-in for the longest time, and I
mean, for years MetLife used Peanuts as their mascot. I mean, it was everywhere.
And now I believe Apple owns all the home video. That's where I watched the 4K restoration of this on Apple TV, and I know like Apple has like on my watch I've got like a Snoopy watch and like all this. So it's just very bizarre, the ownership lineage of the Peanuts. But
I mean, my impression from doing the background research on this is that Charles Schulz was very much like a Matt Groening in terms of like he sold the rights to all sorts of stuff.
Make that bank, dude.
Yeah. And like, you know, even the origins of this special, like, yes, it's sponsored by Coca-Cola, but it also originates from a Ford ad.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, before we get into that, Alan, what's your sort of relationship with the special or the Peanuts in general? I mean, like, you're obviously a little bit older than we are. So, you know, did you watch this on TV growing up, or how did you sort of come to discover A Charlie Brown Christmas?
Yeah, I definitely watched it as a kid, and this is such an odd way that I got even connected to it further than that. Was I used to have a job when I was a freelancer. We worked with the U.S. Postal Service on their product text for stamps, and we did Charlie Brown Christmas stamps. So I did a lot of research into it. I mean, it made me kind of love it even more. And I think as I got older, you know, every December I play the soundtrack, like, you know, every night. When my wife and I have dinner, we'll put on music, and like it's iconic. And I think like that's almost half of what made it great.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna get into that, because I have a very, I mean, again, it's probably not a original take, but I have a take on why this thing endures, and I don't think it's because of the special. But Nate, what about you? Yeah, I very much get the impression, based on knowing you for 20 years, that the Peanuts are not your thing.
Yeah, yeah, Peanuts are not so much my thing. Like, I was thinking about this, and you know, the 138th like episode spectacular, there's the part where they play the first Simpsons short, and then it cuts back to Troy McClure, and he's like, and you know, that's kind of how I feel about Peanuts. I just don't think I ever really got it. And what I will say is, doing the background research for this gave me a lot more appreciation for it. Okay. But like as a kid, it never really spoke to me. So yeah, it's just one of those things. But I mean, I definitely remember the special being on all the time you know, when I was a kid. and watching it several times, even though I don't really think I enjoyed it that much. But now I definitely see the through lines actually to The Simpsons. So that part's kind of exciting. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family that loved the Peanuts, I think. Like, it's funny, my grandfather, I associate Peanuts with my grandfather. Whenever we would go to his house, he would always keep the Sunday Funnies, which is like the comic pages. And like, obviously Peanuts were in there because they've been in there for, 75 years or whatever. And he would reference Peanuts a lot. I eventually learned to play like the theme Linus and Lucy on the piano, and he always wanted me to play that. It's funny there's another Charlie Brown special called It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown, which we were really into. And when I was a kid, he would send my sister and I Halloween greeting cards, which, again, talk about consumer commercialism, the fact that these even existed. But he would send them and like sign them from the Great Pumpkin. And like, we knew that they were from my grandfather, but it was like this sweet little thing. And so I always sort of like, when I think of Peanuts, I think of my grandfather. But it's this weird thing that like, as I got older and started watching it, I realized like how depressing this Christmas special is and how awful these people treat Charlie Brown. And like, as a kid, you sort of laugh at it because like everybody else is laughing about it. But when you act, it's one of those things that like when you step back and you think about it, you're like, these people are horrible to this child, like across all of the I mean, like, in the Great Pumpkin one, it's like, I got a piece of candy, I got a bag of chips, I got a rock. Like, why are grown adults giving this child rocks? Like, it's awful. So I think I sort of have fallen out of love with Peanuts as I've gotten older, because I just see it as like kind of deeply cynical and depressing. But obviously I do have these fond memories because of my grandfather. But I will say this is one that if I'm prioritizing any Christmas animated special, I'm picking The Grinch over Charlie Brown, because I think Chuck Jones's animation in that is just like so fucking good that I can't resist it. But
yeah, that one's a banger.
Yeah, and I mean, you watch Charlie Brown Christmas now, and it does feel very, very rudimentary. I think I'll always have a soft spot for the character, just because, again, he kind of gets dumped on and dumped on and dumped on. And like, there's like a beauty though in that, like, even at the very end, like, he's not like really kind of looking up. Like, that's just the way he is. It's really interesting to see. And also like the Grinch and this special, both, you get older and you realize they're like 26 minutes long each. And it's like, how did these become so iconic? Especially the Grinch. I mean, it's wild that they turned that into, 2 hours of Jim Carrey running around.
My wife loves that Jim Carrey movie.
Really?
Yes. And I remember
my condolences.
Yeah, I know. The very first time we saw it, I was like, again, I was probably like 11 or 12, and it was at like a neighborhood Christmas party, and there were a bunch of little kids, so they put it on, and I was like, this thing is terrible. And then my wife thinks of it fondly, so like every year or every other year, like it gets put in the rotation, and I graciously sit through it, and I'm just like Jim Carrey's giving it all, but like, oh my God, there is not enough meat on that bone to make a 2 hour. Like, and it's 2 hours. It's so goddamn long.
And it's one of those things where the short was perfect.
Yes.
Like, it didn't really need to be the whole thing.
It's anyway, but enough about the Grinch. Nate, how does Charlie Brown Christmas come to be? Talk us through the origins.
Yeah. So, Alan, out of curiosity, did you read the comic, like the strip in the newspaper ever? Or
I did on Sundays, but I was more like a Calvin and Hobbes guy, and Garfield before that, but that like when I was younger. So I don't know, I wasn't the biggest Peanuts guy.
Yeah, I also was not a Funny Pages guy, and I think I was just a very serious kid. And like,
considering I knew you when you were, I mean, granted you were like a teenager by that, but I can confirm you were a very serious kid.
I feel like my wife has given me a more of an appreciation for silliness. But as a kid, I was very like, anti-silly. So obviously Peanuts starts out as like the syndicated comic strip in 1950. It was in 7 newspapers. Charles Schulz was the creator, of course. And he actually often said that Charlie Brown was sort of not autobiographical, like from a story standpoint, but very much based on himself, which is very interesting, given all the things that you were just saying, Adam, about feeling like everyone's dumping on you, and I think the best thing you can say about Charlie Brown is that he's very resilient. But yeah, apparently Schulz, when he was young, he skipped a grade, and so he ended up in this class where he was like the youngest kid and always felt like very ostracized, and so that I think probably had a big influence on the character of Charlie Brown. So Peanuts was, as I was saying, it was kind of like the Simpsons of its day, right? Schulz produced 18,000 comic strips from 1950 to 2000. He's doing it every single day, and he licensed the characters to like everything, right? Like you were saying, Snoopy Watch, right? But one of the most interesting things leading up to this was he licensed the characters in 1959 to the Ford Motor Company to sell a new car. Why the hell Ford was like, that's what we need to sell our car, I have no idea. But that is sort of the origin point for this special, because they hire Bill Melendez to translate the comic book characters into animations for the commercial.
Interesting.
And yeah, and then this catches the attention of a producer named Lee Mendelson, who was actually already working on a documentary about Schulz and Peanuts. And that documentary was sponsored by the Coca-Cola Company. So Mendelson conscripts Melendez and his team to help animate Schulz's work for the documentary as well. And the documentary ends up being called A Boy Named Charlie Brown, which is very confusing because there's actually another movie called that later. And it was completed in 1963, but it actually never aired. So it's just like this thing. You can go find it online now, but it never aired at the time. But it kind of brought together all of the basic elements that you then see in the special.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, this is like the sort of very dawn of the idea of the animated Christmas special. So 1962, we get Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. Not an annual classic. But
it's not terrible.
You've seen this?
Of course I've seen it. I'm Mr. Christmas.
Oh my God, Adam. I'm not a fan of Mr. Magoo, but
first off, I'm
bless.
Mr. Christmas, and B, a Christmas. I adore A Christmas Carol. So I feel like every single adaptation of A Christmas Carol I've seen at least once, probably.
Yes. At the time of this recording, we actually just spoke to Matt Selman for about season 36, and one of the things that he said in the interview was that the one thing that they don't want to do is A Christmas Carol because it feels too obvious.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, we're probably not going to get that one for a while.
How do you even, and like, I don't envy the current team of The Simpsons to like come up with new ideas, and they're doing it. And I'm like, that is,
I know.
They have a lot harder job. Well, that's an interesting question. I think it's just as hard as the early days, just a differently hard.
They have a much harder job than season 10 did. Maybe we'll put it that way. But yeah,
totally. So, and then right before this is released, you actually get the very first Rankin Bass special as well. So Rudolph comes out in 1964. But like those are the two basically before this special that come out. So it's still a pretty new idea, but kind of picks up steam very quickly, and this definitely is part of the rise of that whole trend. So, in April of 1965, Time has a cover story of Peanuts. And soon afterwards, Coke gets back on the phone with Mendelson and is like, hey, do you think your team could do a Christmas special? This is April of 1965. And Mendelssohn's yeah, of course. I think we could definitely do that. So he calls up Schulz and he's like, yeah, so Coke wants a Christmas special. Do you think you could put together like an outline by tomorrow? And Schulz is like, yeah, sure. Okay. So they basically put their heads together and they come up with the outline for this special and send it to Coke the next day in April of 1965.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then they put together this special for that year.
Wow.
Coke originally wanted this to be an hour.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And Melendez was basically like, yeah, that's not possible on the 4-month timeline you've given us. And especially because their total budget was only $76,000. Now, of course, with inflation, it's hard to understand exactly like what that means, right? So to put that into context, a single episode of The Simpsons in 2011, before they stopped paying the voice actors so much, cost $5 million, right?
Wow.
Now, adjusted for inflation, that would be $280,000 in 1965.
Okay.
So that's still over 3 times the budget of this special. Wow. So it's not a lot of money, and it's not a lot of time, is the bottom line.
No.
So they eventually agree on this half-hour special. Again, for context, the special is shot at 12 frames per second, which is part of why it looks a little,
Not
whatever.
uncommon for television animation, though. They usually,
Right.
Animate on twos, as they say.
Right. So they had to produce about 13,000 cells in 4 months.
Good Lord.
Yep. The design of the Peanuts characters also were really not intended for animation, and luckily, the team had a bit of a head start in trying to figure this problem out. But like one of the most obvious things is like when you look at the actual comic strip, the characters look different from the side than they look from the front, right? They're not like 3-dimensional shapes that move easily, around. And so they had to kind of figure out like what the hell was the transition when someone turns their head, and they sort of figure out this sort of trick where it snaps into place, basically, right? But similarly, they have these tiny little legs that have to move incredibly quickly when the characters walk. They have tiny arms and huge heads. So, like, for example, if you ever want a character to reach above their head, they can't. They physically can't do it. And so they had to figure out ways to do things like have the characters turn to the side whenever they raise their hands up, right? So it's like they had to figure out all of these tricks to try to make these characters actually work in animation. And again, on a very tight timeline and tight budget.
I was going to say, it's really funny listening to the Simpsons animators sort of talk about what animation was like before the Simpsons. And they sort of talk about the Hanna-Barbera cartoons as being so... Like, I didn't know this as a kid, that they're sort of considered to be cheap looking. Like, the characters are never shot from above because like the silhouettes are, again, not designed to like have 3D motion or 3D movement. And again, this is just a great example of like, it's like a Charlie Brown Christmas versus a Simpsons episode is just so different.
I really do think that that's actually a huge part of why I didn't like Peanuts, is because I was totally spoiled by The Simpsons and how cinematic it was, but also like other things that were appearing in the 90s, right? You also have like Nickelodeon, right? You also have anime, right? Coming over from Japan that was like, I mean, in Japan, like they had all sorts of tricks for also producing things very cheaply, but like even so, the quality of the animation was still head and shoulders above, what was coming out of America in like the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, or maybe less so the 80s, I guess.
That being said, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, watching this in 4K, which is just like an astonishing, when you think about this was made for basically no money. I don't think they could ever have fathomed how it would eventually be viewed. But, the level of detail that you get out of that is pretty impressive. And it does make me sort of wish that those early Simpsons seasons that were all done on like ink and paint, cell animation, I really do wish that we could see a, proper HD, not even remastered, but like a restoration, like go back to the original cells, which I literally don't think this is even possible because I'm sure they've sold all this stuff off. But it would be great to see what that show could look like if it was scanned in HD. Because I think those early seasons of The Simpsons look absolutely incredible, and it's a shame that they're kind of stuck in that era.
Yeah, there's like a lived-in quality, or a not weathered, but sort of, it just feels more natural to me than a lot of the digital animation. And the colors in Charlie Brown Christmas are great. Like it's the scene with Linus at the end when he's telling the story of Jesus's birth, like the reds and the lights, it is magical in some way. Even when people are 2 minutes earlier were calling Charlie Brown stupid or
blockhead.
Yeah, right. I think Lucy calls him stupid. Yeah,
exactly. So Nate, how did this do? I mean, obviously we know how it did. We're still talking about it 60 years later, but how did it do at the time?
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting because like both Schulz and Melendez, when they finished the whole thing and they started like screening it for executives, were like, "Oh shit, like this is terrible." They were very unhappy with like the quality of the animation, I think in particular.
Right.
But immediately it did very, very well. So when it aired on December 9th, 1965, it attracted 15.5 million viewers. Which was about 45% of the viewing audience that night, which sounds very impressive until you realize that it was still beat out by Bonanza.
Which
that was just TV back then.
Up until The Simpsons, the longest running show on television.
Right.
So
right. It was a beloved
there you
show, and it was also at a time where there weren't very many channels. So it's like you could have two shows that make up like literally 95% of the viewing audience.
Right.
So anyway... but the special also won an Emmy in 1966, and Schultz's response was, Charlie Brown is not used to winning, so thank you. The network immediately, of course, ordered 4 more specials, including, the ones that you were talking about, Adam, and other Christmas specials quickly followed, including, of course, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This is also kind of the very beginnings of... stations sort of recognizing that they could also be showing classic movies of the Christmas time as well. Right. So like this is before you get like It's a Wonderful Life showing up on TV all the time. But I feel like this is when they really start clicking like, oh, people will watch this stuff if we air it again and again every year.
To that point, Alan, like, do you remember if you saw this originally because it aired on television, or did like your family have like a VHS of it that you from Shell that you would watch? Like, do you remember how you first encountered this, or like, because it's one of those things that like it's just been around forever, so I feel like it just kind of is ubiquitous. But do you remember that?
Yeah, it was definitely on TV, one of the yearly showings. I mean, I do sort of remember it as being. It's kind of like when they showed Home Alone, I think like, right. After Thanksgiving, like it's kind of like the beginning of the holiday season. Even if I wasn't that into the special, I was sort of happy about it becoming Christmas season. And so it was definitely on network TV.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cause that's the thing. Like it's been such a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember, but I don't remember the first time I saw it. I'm assuming it was probably airing on like one of the many cable channels we had at the time. Like Nate, I'm thinking like YTV or something.
It was definitely YTV.
And my parents were probably like, oh,
probably
Charlie
global
Brown,
too.
Yeah. Like let's sit down and let's watch this thing. But like, yeah, I'm just sort of with these perennial things that become classics. And I think, again, Nate and I grew up in this. I mean, you did as well, Alan, but like you're obviously a few years older than us. But we grew up in this weird era where it was like cable television exists and they need to fill the time, but they don't have enough original content. So they start just recycling all of this stuff from the 60s and 70s. Like the amount of 70s television that I watched as a kid. Like I watched all those Hanna-Barbera cartoons. I watched MASH and I watched Beverly Hillbillies and Bewitched. And because it was like, it was on because they needed to fill the hours on all of these channels. And so like, and my son's generation, like they're only going to encounter this stuff because we force it upon them, not because they we just watched it because it was like, well, there's nothing else to watch, so we're going to watch this old content from at that time it would have only been 30 years old. But yeah, so I'm just sort of I'm always fascinated by these things that become, sort of cultural icons, and how are they going to evolve for the next 30 years? Because it's like, will Charlie Brown still have that staying power? And if it does, it will be because it's been passed on, not because it's just on necessarily.
Yeah, and it sort of speaks to, again, another cliche word, but like the monoculture. Like we were fed things that anyone with television or cable television could see. Whereas again, like my oldest friend has a 12-year-old, and he loves The Simpsons. And it's not just because he discovered it on Disney Plus. It's because my friend told him about it. And I think what drives my friend crazy is like his son he values a season 30 Simpsons episode just as much as he
Right.
does like a season 4 one, which is really
Right.
funny.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it all it flattens it, it flattens the time. So
These kids who like the prequels to Star Wars and don't understand that those don't exist, right? Like, totally. No, but that's the thing, right? Like my son is still a little too young to appreciate any of this stuff. But I do kind of wonder about like the children of our generation and what will be the things that withstand the test of time. And like I feel like movies are different because movies don't really play in yes, there's rep cinemas, but generally speaking it's through home video and it's through what you pass on to your kids or whatever. But television for our generation was like, yes, there was a little bit of like my parents would be like, oh, I like this show as a kid, you'll like it too. But a lot of it was just like, well, I watched it because it was on. So I watched a ton of 60s, 70s, and 80s TV because it was like, well, I'm a 10-year-old and that's what's on at 7 o'clock in the morning.
And there probably is stuff from the 70s and the 80s and the 60s that you actually can't watch. Like,
yeah,
you might be able to get it on home video somewhere. Like, you still get a DVD or something, but like, it might not be on streaming, which makes it practically invisible, I think, to younger people.
And I also think like our parents' generation, they had things that they loved, but maybe they weren't able to remember every detail of it. So then when you pass it on to your kids, I have this vivid memory of, my dad, by the time Animal House came out, my dad was well out of college, 6 or 7 years out of college. And he loved it because it reminded him of his fraternity at, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Now, when he showed us that movie when I was probably 11 years old, and in the first 5 minutes, Otter pulls a dildo out and slaps it on the table, I don't think he realized how dirty it was. Whereas now, like, my friend knows that he can screen certain movies or episodes to show his kids. Mm-hmm. And, like, yeah.
No, it's true. There were definitely movies that I would rent because I was like interested in them, and some of them, most of the time, my dad would be like, "Yeah, that's fine." And then there were every so often there were a couple that they would sort of pre-screen just to make sure it was. I remember vividly the two films that I really wanted to see and I ultimately was not allowed to was Saturday Night Fever. They just straight up would not let me rent it, even though I was like obsessed with the soundtrack. And Fame, which they did let me rent, but they were like, we're going to watch this before we let you watch it. And then they watched it and they're like, yeah, you're not watching this. So, but yeah, like it is this sort of interesting, I think that's totally true, Alan. Like,
yeah. And I mean, I think the other interesting thing we've kind of uncovered now that we can like statistically analyze like movie parodies on The Simpsons is that like the ones that they parody the most are the ones that were airing on TV all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, with a few exceptions, but like It's a Wonderful Life. It is The Wizard of Oz, right? All of those types of movies that played on an annual basis. Ben-Hur, right? All of those things. And it's probably because they did like burn into people's brains. You'd watch it every year. So you remember that moment when this happens. You remember that line of dialogue. Whereas something that you just saw once in theaters, like, there's occasions where it makes that kind of impression on you, but a lot of it you just forget,
Yeah, and that is an interesting point that I was obsessed with when I was working on the book, which is hearing the writers and animators talk about how they did movie parodies in the early 90s at The Simpsons, because, again, like, you couldn't Google like a scene from The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Like, you couldn't find that. You couldn't, the one that I love is like the early works of Diane Arbus, the photographer. like they had to send PAs out to find books, to go to the Warner Brothers archive and bring still shots from the movies.
That's the thing. Like, you couldn't even go to Blockbuster. Like, the home video was in its heyday, like its early days. Like, this stuff. Some of it just didn't exist in an easily accessible format, which now boggles the mind. But Nate and I have talked about this. We're like, it's astonishing how accurate some of these parodies are when you know that they weren't able to do what we would be able to do, which is just pull it up on YouTube and do a shot-for-shot remake. Like, they would have either had to track down a copy somehow, or it was just so indelibly seared into their memories that they knew how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Alan, you in your book you talk about them like literally getting like color Xeroxes of prints, and then they had to give them back, right?
Yeah, and they would have they would be parodying movies that were not out on home video yet. So
Right.
I don't quite know. I'm sure they got their hands on some actual like movie prints, but a lot of them like they had to go see the movie 5 times in the theater to get it right.
Right.
Yeah, so
It's
crazy. I mean, coming back to Charlie Brown, I mean, one of the other thing I sort of rabbit hole I went down was just like I feel like the Peanuts specials and the comic strip were really actually pretty influential on The Simpsons in like really quiet ways.
That would make sense considering Matt Groening's sort of origins as a comic strip artist.
The story that I heard a couple times basically was that Groening was just like Charles Schulz. He wanted characters that you could identify just by their silhouettes.
Right.
And look at all the Simpsons, you know,
Yep.
Marge's hair, Homer's head, Bart's hair, Lisa's hair,
Yeah.
and Maggie too. You know, like she's half the size of them, but they're very identifiable, which is maybe an underrated part about like why those characters really popped, especially at the beginning, like showing up on T-shirts and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Adam, I don't think it's in your background right now, but yes, the other day you had like a little Bart head in the back.
Yeah, that's from my here. I'll grab it. Yeah, when we were interviewing Matt Selman, I wanted to try and show off a little bit. But yeah, that's from my giant ass red book, and I just had that on my shelf.
Just
but yeah,
Bart's
like
hair.
You immediately know what that is.
Yep, 100%.
And yeah, Alan is currently wearing a Bart Simpson T-shirt that I think is so good. And where did you get that?
So I got this in a vintage store in New York City, and I love the wear on it. I collect old T-shirts, which again is like living my childhood, one overpriced T-shirt at a time. But I have like a Who Shot Mr. Burns shirt. I have a good Itchy and Scratchy. And I have several Barts, stuff like the Underachiever shirt, which my parents didn't let me wear as a kid. I had to get one of those. One of my favorite details, which was so weird that, again, my book editors were like, what is this and why does it matter? Which is in Basic Instinct, Jean Triplehorn's character has a Bart keychain.
Oh.
And she like waves it around and stuff. And I believe it's a light blue shirt. And I became really obsessed with this, and so I sent a note to Paul Verhoeven, the director's office, and I'd interviewed him. I'd interviewed him before about Total Recall,
right?
And I got a note back directly from him, and he kind of got a kick out of it. And he basically was like, "Nah, I wasn't a fan, but someone in the prop department was." It's perfect because that was one of the most recognizable images of the '90s.
Yeah.
So I think what it was just a way to to draw your eye to this object that she's holding on to.
Totally. And then, of course,
awesome.
The Simpsons parody the most iconic moment of Basic Instinct with groundskeeper Willie, of all people.
Right. One of those moments that does sear its way into your brain the first time you see it.
Sure does. And again, one of those, we talk about it on the show all the time, Nate, one of those things where it's like, I saw the Simpsons parody long before I saw the thing, and then you're like, oh, that's what that is. So
Yep. Well, I mean, to your point, Alan, Matt Groening definitely was influenced, I think, by Charles Schulz in terms of like the animation. His characters Akbar and Jeff from Life in Hell, for example, they started life as his poor drawings of Charlie Brown, and then eventually evolved into their own characters. And he also, I think, took a lot of inspiration from the vibe, right? Going back to your original one-sentence summary, right? When Schulz died in 2000, Matt Groening wrote in The Guardian, I was excited by the casual cruelty and offhand humiliations at the heart of the strip. Peanuts seemed emotionally real and unlike anything else. Occasional sadness comes up, such as Charlie Brown's complaints that no one likes him and Patty's unsympathetic explanations of why this is so. But this is offset by a friendly drawing style, great jokes, and a sense of childhood exuberance that makes the discouragements of life seem a worthy price to pay. I was like, oh, that's The Simpsons. It's like so much The Simpsons, and this episode totally captures that same vibe for me as well. A couple other people influenced by Schulz. Jim Reardon was hired onto The Simpsons partly because of his student film, which was called Bring Me the Head of Charlie Brown. And it's basically it starts out as almost like a parody of an ad for one of these specials, but it's like ultra violent and full of all sorts of like parodies, basically, right? You have like Godzilla's in there, Rambo's in there. One of my favorite ones is that they make Charlie Brown sound like Ricky Ricardo, so that when he's talking to Lucy. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's like it's full of stuff like that, and it's also narrated by Rich Moore. So that's a nice little fun Simpsons connection. But that's part of what got him the job. So I feel like there's all these interesting kind of tendrils of Charles Schulz and Charlie Brown that kind of finds its way into the show. Not least of the fact is that they also started with a Christmas special, the one that Adam thought we were watching today.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I mean, you could argue that, again, the Charlie Brown Christmas special, like that The Simpsons might not have existed without the Charlie Brown one to sort of pave the way. Because they sort of realized it was the best way to do like a backdoor pilot.
Totally. Yeah, I think in your book you talked about them even negotiating about like, you know, whether it should be a series of specials or it should be a TV series. And you could imagine it being almost Peanuts-like.
Yeah, that was definitely like, I think Barry Diller was like, yeah, let's make these. Again, it's hard not to imagine him thinking of Peanuts, but James L. Brooks kind of smartly was like, we don't want that. We want a show. And I think, but like, that's the thing. Like the special idea was a good idea, but you know, I don't think Diller or Fox really had the vision that Brooks did to sort of know, like, no, if we commit to the special, like, we're not going to be able to make the show.
Totally.
Right.
Well, let's get a little deeper into the sort of highlights and lowlights of Charlie Brown Christmas. Alan, what is the key ingredient that makes this special what it is for you? I mean, you kind of alluded to this already with the fact that it's like the vibe, but you know, is it the tone, the characters, the animation, the music? Like, I think those are sort of the four things we're probably going to talk about, but what is the thing that sort of, you know, jumps out the most to you?
I think it's the character. Like, Charlie Brown is so unflinchingly moody and sad and kind of questioning, which again, like, you don't, like, we talk about Bart Simpson being irreverent. And I mean, Charlie Brown was too. He didn't say, you know, who the hell are you or anything like that, but like, he was not sort of just going with the flow. And I find that endearing. I think it gets exhausting too, but like, it's his mood that makes the special to me.
How would you describe the tone? I mean, because you talked about like the vibe. You know, the show is very vibey. How would you describe the vibe of it?
Kind of like melancholy. Like it's not terribly joyful in a lot of ways.
The least festive. Again, this is why I've sort of like stopped watching it religiously every year, because I'm like, for a Christmas special, this is like the least festive Christmas special I've ever seen.
But it sort of gets to what Groening said about Peanuts. Like, so you have this character who's just really sad all the time, and then, but again, the visuals are very pretty. Like the Snoopy's doghouse with the lights on it is really cool, and the school auditorium where they're practicing
and the skating,
rehearsing, skating on the pond,
the snow.
There is like an aesthetic, like, that is very pretty, even if the animation is not particularly smooth.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I was thinking about it, and the way I best could sum it up was that it starts with a conversation about depression and ends with quoting scripture. And it's just like, it's such a weird, like, when you think about every other Christmas special, that's so weird. Like, all of that is still so weird. That it starts in this place of being like, I'm sad and I don't know why. Like, it's like that that episode of The Simpsons. Is it Moaning Lisa? Where it's like the premise was just like, I felt like Lisa should just be sad and not know why. And that's kind of the plot of this special, is him figuring it out and then kind of finding some, you know, quantum of joy, I guess.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's also probably like, of all the Christmas specials I've watched, and I watch a lot of them, this is probably the least secular Christmas special that sort of becomes a perennial favorite. Like, the fact that Linus has that sort of iconic speech where he talks about like the actual like origins of Christmas. You know, most Christmas specials don't really address the like Jesus of it all.
Yeah.
Whereas this one sort of does so head on.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them.
Yeah, it's the Annunciation to the shepherds, I believe. And it's very, it's, you know, there's some beauty to that. Like, it's almost shocking. Like, you listen to it and it's somehow both religious and very welcoming, or like, it's not alienating. Like, I'm a Jewish guy. Like, it didn't bother me at all. It's very sweet. And I think that it works. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting, like chunk that they choose too, because it's not like the most Jesus-y part.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's the angels emerging to the shepherds and this moment of kind of awe, right? Something supernatural happening to these people that are like historically are like the most humble of humble people, right?
Yeah.
That are like doing like a dirty, annoying, painful, you know, job. And so it's kind of the perfect like thing to draw out for Charlie Brown, right? Like that's the whole thing, is it's like miracles can happen even to the lowly, et cetera, et cetera. And I gather that Schulz was like a pretty religious guy as well. So I think he really fought for the inclusion of that, even though literally everyone, like his director, his producer, Coca-Cola, everyone was like, this is a bad idea. We should not do this.
I mean,
the
line,
like, we gotta.
Yeah, like peace and goodwill towards men is how it ends. And it's like, I don't know, you can't fight with that. It is poignant.
It is, jumping the gun. I think it's probably my favorite part of the whole show. And I am not a religious person at all. Like,
Same.
Again, we celebrated a very secular Christmas in this household. But there's something about the sincerity of it all that I find deeply moving. And to your point, Nate, that they pick this moment that isn't, it's not about Jesus Christ. It's about like the goings on around it and saying that that's what Christmas is really about. And I think that's really, it is really moving. And like, again, it's beautifully animated, and considering it's delivered by like an 8-year-old, like it is a very well delivered speech.
And Linus is like such a vulnerable, like sweet little kid who, you know, like he's sort of the heart of Peanuts, and I think that it just made that perfect.
Yeah, Linus is my favorite Peanut, which I think says a lot about me and why I wasn't like super into Peanuts, because I'm like, oh, I like the serious, sincere one.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue, because we should talk about these characters, because, you know, obviously, outside of The Simpsons, they're probably the most iconic animated characters in American, culture. Do you guys have a favorite Peanut? I mean, Nate, for you, it's obviously Linus. Alan, what about you? Who's your favorite?
I like Lucy. I think she's...
Oh, she's great.
I mean, like the cantankerousness of her and like abrasiveness is just really funny. And I think like the way she like kind of bullies Charlie Brown, like I just can't get enough of it. And also, my brother's a psychologist, and she does her little amateur psychology thing.
Yeah,
it's just it's charming.
Yeah, for sure.
Adam, what about you?
As a pianist, I feel like I'm drawn to Schroeder, but especially in this special, like I love Snoopy. Like I know that Snoopy has no dialogue ever, but I think I also like, as someone who is always admired like slapstick comedy and silent comedy, like the juice they are able to wring out of Snoopy's non-dialogue is great. And like there's just so many, especially in this special, there's so much great stuff with Snoopy. So yeah, I think I don't know if that counts if he's one, because he's not a kid, but it's got to be Snoopy for me.
Yeah, voiced by Melendez himself.
Oh, I didn't know that. There you go.
Yeah, they just like sped up his like sounds, but in that documentary, I think they have a video of him like, doing the voice, and it's just him being like rah, 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 and then they just speed it up.
That's amazing. That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, like the choice in this to have the kids, I mean, of course, this has been said a million times, but the choice of having the kids actually do the voices is definitely part of the magic of this and what makes it so unique. Again, like not something that is still done pretty much ever.
Although, actually, it's funny, again, having a 3-year-old and watching a lot of children's television, it's become much more of a thing. Like,
Oh, interesting.
the kids on Bluey are all voiced by kids. A lot, like some of these other, I think Paw Patrol uses actual children. We watch the show Wonderoos, which is all children. I'm trying to think of like other animated, but yeah, there's a lot more animated shows are. I have to imagine like it must be way more complicated because of like child labor laws and stuff. But
Especially now, yeah, for sure. Not to mention the fact that they grow out of the roles really quickly.
I was going to say, even like when we were kids, like shows like Arthur and Franklin, like I know, Nate, you went to summer camp with the voice of Franklin.
Yeah, Shakespeare camp. I was that cool.
Yeah, you were very cool, dude. But yeah, so but again, that all starts with Peanuts. Like, you know, it's The Simpsons didn't do it. And, you know, I do think the show is starting to suffer from the actors maybe aging out of their roles, but unfortunately. But yeah, it is something that does sort of like add this extra layer of magic to the special. To that point, what do you guys have a favorite moment in the show? I mean, I think I've sort of alluded to the fact that for me it's definitely Linus's speech, but what are there other moments that sort of stand out to you guys?
I like when Charlie Brown is again visiting Lucy, and Lucy's going through all his phobias and you know this like very clinical language that like when I was a kid I would have like tried to mimic and be like, do you know what this means? And it's like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I actually think that's my favorite scene as well, because it's just particularly when she starts talking, they get into the conversation about commercialism, and she starts talking about like real estate and stuff like that. That gets me. I think she gets the best gags in the whole special for sure.
The "My lips touch dog lips" is a for whatever reason that is a Schulz family quote. My sister will say it. My dad says it. My grandfather would say it. Like, again, it just for whatever reason there's something very funny about that interaction between her and Snoopy that has withstood the test of time.
The skating is also a real highlight. It's just like it's the mood setter for a moody, vibey special where you're just like, you have the music, you have these beautiful visuals, and it really, for a short special, it takes its time getting going, which I really appreciate.
Well, I'm going to use that as a segue to the next thing I want to talk about, which is Vince Guaraldi's iconic score. Because again, this is sort of my quote unquote hot take, which again, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the first person to have this. I'm sure many other people have posited this, but I think this show becomes a perennial classic, an iconic, memorable, annual thing because of that soundtrack. And I think, because again, you have to think about, for the sort of first 20, 30 years of its run, before home video exists, the way to relive it is if it's airing on your local, you know, CBS rerun. But the soundtrack comes out, and I have to imagine lots of people bought that soundtrack, lots of people played that soundtrack every Christmas, and that sort of solidifies it as this piece of, you know, Christmas iconography. And then in the 90s, when home video comes around and it becomes more readily available, well, everybody sort of like, you know, again, our parents' generation, like, they remember it airing, they remember the soundtrack, and therefore they sort of bring it into the mainstream culture, and it becomes this thing that everybody watches every year because it's now more readily available. But I genuinely think that if that soundtrack wasn't as successful as it was, that maybe this wouldn't have the legs that it ultimately did. There's no way to prove that, obviously, but the sound, like, to your point, Alan, like, I don't necessarily watch this movie every year, but that I literally have it right there behind me. You know, this is a audio medium, but my vinyl record of this is in near constant rotation. Like, I listen to this weekly throughout December.
How long is it? That's what I wanted to ask.
I mean, it's only like, yeah, I think it's probably like 35 minutes, if that. Like,
longer than the special.
Yeah, longer than the special. Well, in fact,
I think it must be.
Let me pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up on iTunes
Because I just looked, I admittedly looked on Spotify, and the problem is it's like an expanded edition, so it has like the Thanksgiving stuff and Great Pumpkin.
It's
and so,
wow!
like,
I can't. I nailed it. It is 34 minutes long.
wow.
Okay.
Front to back.
That makes sense because they probably just cut things a little bit short, fade things out a little
Well,
bit.
you get because you do get Christmas Time is Here twice. Once as an instrumental, once with the vocals. But
Right.
yeah, like it is, and it's interesting too because watching it, I noticed there's a bunch more music in the show that's not on the album. A lot of it's sort of like incidental, non-Christmas music
Like segues
that
and
that I think
transitions,
came from that because that Linus and Lucy theme that becomes like the Charlie Brown Peanuts theme was from that special that you mentioned, Nate. Like that's
Right,
where
because
it
Guaraldi was
originates.
involved in that too.
Exactly.
And did the score for the documentary, and so there was some pre-existing music.
So I think those missing pieces are originate from that special as well.
Yeah, and fun fact about the Linus and Lucy bit. So the way that Guaraldi was sort of, I guess, discovered by I think it was by Melendez. Was he was like driving around in San Francisco listening to this local radio station called KSFO, and the song comes on called "Cast Your Fate to the Wind," which is by Vince Guaraldi, and it was this sort of minor hit that was written for a concept album inspired by the film Black Orpheus from 1959.
Okay.
So no, it wasn't even the official soundtrack. It was an album, I think, of maybe Brazilian music.
Okay,
Or Brazilian jazz that was like inspired by the movie. Right. And so anyway, he wrote this, and I think this track was like late in the album, but it got some play on the radio. And so, it was Lee Mendelsohn was driving and heard it and was like, that's what we need. And if you listen to this other song, it's actually very similar to Linus and Lucy. So Linus and Lucy's kind of like the way in from that other song, and then it kind of expands out from there. So I thought that was kind of neat. I had no idea because like the thing is that this is probably the thing he's the most famous for at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to that, I mean, Alan, you talked about that you play this album all the time now. Was this, to my sort of theory, was it a part of your childhood as well, or again, is it sort of something that you came to appreciate later?
I came to appreciate the music absolutely later. when I was younger, there's no way I would have. I do recall as a kid, like my dad kind of getting cranky at the overplaying of different Christmas music. So like we didn't play a lot of Christmas music in my home.
Well, and I guess being of a non-Christmas background, being Jewish, I imagine that there wasn't a lot of Christmas going on in your house necessarily. But
not really. No, I mean, the thing is, like, Christmas was like, we went to the movies and we had Chinese food. Like, I think now everybody goes to the movies on Christmas, but in the 90s, it was pretty empty,
Yeah.
So we had our own traditions for Christmas, but not a lot of music, I would say.
Interesting. Okay.
Sure.
Well, that does make sense. Because again, it's like for my family, weirdly, I don't think we did have a copy of this. Like I similarly, I came to appreciate it later in life, sort of as a late teens sort of era. But we had all sorts of other Christmas music was playing all the time. But weirdly, this was not among the things that we played.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. We listen to it every year now. It's like, we have like a very small vinyl collection of like, probably like 50 albums, something like that. And this is one of them. We have like a little Christmas section, but it's like that's the time of year where we bust out the vinyl because it makes you slow down and you have to kind of take care of it and all of that and be more intentional. And you aren't like suddenly interrupted by something coming on your like Spotify list where you're like, what the hell is this? You're like, no, it's just the thing that I want. But yeah, like growing up, we didn't have that. And my parents, of course, again, this is really like bringing up a lot of childhood stuff here. We didn't listen to Christmas music really. Like we maybe had some Christmas albums, but it was like weird stuff. It was like, I don't know, someone that my parents liked who did a Christmas album. It was never like sort of classic Christmas music, at least as I recall it. So again, there was sort of like a resistance, I think, in my household to that kind of stuff, like pop culture in general.
Yes. Knowing your parents, that totally tracks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Alan, I tell this famous story, well, not famous. I tell this story a lot of how one time I was over at Nate's house and I came downstairs and his dad was sitting in the living room. Just
I'm scared.
I know. I'm like, I don't remember this. Where is this going?
He's just listening to the soundtrack to Dead Man Walking.
Wow.
That checks out.
Well, there's
Totally
a good
checks
Pearl.
out.
There's is it The Long Road? Is that the Pearl Jam song on that soundtrack?
I think it's all by Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, right.
But again, it was just a weird thing to come down and your best friend's dad is just like sitting there enwrapped by the music of Dead Man Walking.
Yeah, man. That's my parents, and my brother's a musician, and always was always introducing me to, like, you know, progressively weirder and more indie stuff as he got older, and always a step ahead of me. But like that was the vibe, and so we didn't have a lot of traditional Christmas music around, I would say.
Yeah, no.
Unless Eddie Vedder made it, and then maybe that would be acceptable.
Totally.
I think so. Well, Alan, is there anything else you wanna hit on?
I mean, again, it's hard not to watch this episode and think of the Simpsons Christmas special. Like, there's a lineage there. I mean, I know we touched on it, but you know, you guys are a Simpsons movie podcast. I just think it is very apparent, and I like that.
Yeah.
I think it's also really funny that, you know, to me, when I think of The Simpsons doing Charlie Brown Christmas, the thing that comes to mind is actually the end of a Treehouse of Horror episode where they say Happy Halloween and then start doing the Hark the Herald Angels Sing, but they do the truly bizarre choice on the behalf of the animators of the Charlie Brown Christmas where all of the kids' heads turn upwards to sing.
Right.
And
it's just their mouths that are visible.
Yeah, exactly. Which, again, like, it's iconic and, like, you know exactly what they're doing, but it is just, like, again, bizarre choice on the part of the Charlie Brown animators, but then again, the idea that the Simpsons don't do this in a Christmas episode because that would be too on the nose. They do it in a Halloween special.
It's really
I'm pretty sure that's a Merkin year, which I think I've gathered that's pretty, Merkin-esque, as they say.
But it is, I mean, that is the thing is, like, yes, Simpsons have Christmas episodes and I do, you know, I love those, but like it is funny that the perennial Simpsons holiday that they choose ultimately ends up being Halloween and not Christmas, which is kind of like
Christmas episodes, but they're never billed as Christmas specials, which is interesting.
I think was Marge Be Not Proud the first post premiere Simpsons episode, rather Christmas episode?
Good question.
That's a good question. I mean,
explicitly themed about Christmas.
Hold on. I will pull up my. This is how much of a nerd I am, guys. Is that I created a whole. So I ripped a bunch of my episodes just about winter because when it's wintertime, as a Canadian, I don't like that most media doesn't feature snow. And like The Simpsons is this one weird. It's like, again, because it's animation, like it's not uncomfortable to make stuff in the snow.
Well, and Springfield is also like a weird amalgam of like Los Angeles and then like I don't even know, occasionally like the suburbs of Boston or New York or something.
And Portland a little bit too.
And Portland, it's kind of all over.
I'm from the suburbs of Boston, so
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might be right, Alan. It's like they have episodes that are set in the wintertime, but it's looking like because Mr. Plow isn't a Christmas. I think Marge Be Not Proud might be the first sort of return to the holiday season.
Christmas
anyway.
itself.
Yeah.
I know how I can check. 1 second. The Simpsons, because I also own this. It's just I don't have it ripped. The Christmas DVD that they put out. That will be... So what episodes are on there? Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, Mr. Plow, which is not a Christmas episode, Miracle on Evergreen Terrace, Grift of the Magi, and She of Little Things. So they don't even include Marge Be Not Proud. But I think you might be right. I think that is sort of the first return to the holiday season, as it were.
Yeah, which is a good reminder that we're running out of Christmas episodes rapidly.
Yeah. Nate, we did The Exorcist, so there's always options.
This is the thing. Yeah, and like The Godfather's a Christmas movie. Came out around Christmas, at least. Yeah, I mean, like, one of the things that I was thinking about with the Linus speech as well is that, Christmas aside, The Simpsons does deal with Christianity a whole lot, and was also sort of like, I mean, I'm curious, Alan, if you have some perspective on this, but like, that feels very unusual at the time, in the same sort of way, where it's like, you probably had all these sitcoms where it's sort of implied that, of course, these upstanding people are churchgoers, but they probably never dealt with church or Christianity or the Ten Commandments or God and Satan or any of the stuff that The Simpsons deals with. But is that an accurate read, do you think?
I think so. I think they wanted to include sort of weekly church going as almost a counterbalance to all the irreverence and subversion. And it was a really, I think, smart way to sort of be able to, fire back at any critics being like, this show's dangerous. It's like, no, this is an intact family. I know these are sort of like, I'm sort of spouting almost right-wing talking points, but but they go to church every week. They stick together. Like this is not a deviant family. And again, like, the way they interact with Christianity, like there's questioning of it, but there's also, they embrace it. Like the episode where Homer gives up going to church, like he regains his faith at the end. Like, it's not forever.
Well, I mean, the Simpsons have met God too, right? Like
they have this like interesting relationship where, I feel like the show is pretty down on organized religion, but the family members often have a personal relationship with God.
Yes.
In a way that's very, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it is interesting that it grapples with Christianity so much. And I don't know, I guess the thing I keep thinking about is you have this moment with Linus, and then at the very end, it kind of veers away from that a little bit. I mean, I guess that like, at the end, Charlie Brown gets kind of a Christmas miracle, which is that like all his friends come back, or I don't know, the kids he hangs out with come back.
Friends is maybe a
strong word. And they like decorate the tree for him, and then they sing, right? And like the thing that I was thinking about rewatching it this time was I was like, did the kids actually learn anything? Did they change as people or characters? Or are kids just like mercurial little assholes and they're like mean 1 second and then they like change their mind and were nice in that moment, but like they'll be mean later. You know what I mean?
So I think if you sort of listen to what they're saying, basically the lesson is like, yeah, Charlie Brown's an idiot, but we should still love him. That's
right.
That's basically the message. And
it's kind of like, I don't know, like that feels like authentic to childhood. Like you just sort of like, you don't really hate anybody when you're a kid because you don't really have any reason to, like, they're the kids you tease or like bully if you're that type, but you know what I mean, like in a weird way. I think like that is again sort of the magic of this show, is that it does feel so true to that sort of childhood experience.
Yeah, they do feel like kids, and in that sense, it is very authentic that they don't really learn or change that much. They're just kids, and they act like kids, and they changed in that moment, and for that moment, they were being kind to Charlie Brown, and in next week's comic strip, he'll get called a blockhead and fall on his back when trying to kick a football.
It's funny, the ending of this episode, or of this special rather, always reminds me of That 70s Show, which was another sort of like pop culture moment in Nate and Mai's history, Alan. And there's an episode that is clearly 100% riffing on this idea, where Eric is asked to direct the church pageant and it goes terribly. And then in the end, his friends all gather together and give him this wonderful Christmas gift. And it features Canada's own Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall as Pastor Dave, one of a truly underrated That 70s Show character. And it also features a parody of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Like they do a full sort of like, I guess we would call it claymation, but like Rankin Bass style stop motion animation. Anyway, it just like watching this, I kept thinking about that, and I was like, oh, that's such a great episode of this other show that was such a huge part of my like pop culture growing up. Well, Nate, do we want to move on to the Simpsons speed round?
Let's do it. Are there any moments in this special that feel like Simpsons jokes but aren't?
Definitely, I think Lucy sort of psychoanalyzing Charlie Brown reminds me like a little bit of maybe Lisa and Bart having conversations, like when Bart sells his soul and Lisa is sort of like asking him about Pablo Neruda, and and it's not quite psychological, but like this like weird, like clearly breaking character and talking like an adult like moment that
Absolutely.
Totally. I also was thinking about Lucy as well. She has this one line where she says, "We all know that Christmas is a big commercial racket. It's run by a big Eastern syndicate." Which not only is like funny in and of itself, but my theory is that that's actually a meta joke from Charles Schulz, because Peanuts was published by the United Features Syndicate. So that because it was a syndicated comic. So it's actually very much like one of those Fox jokes that we get all the time in The Simpsons of kind of like biting the hand that feeds you. So I thought that was pretty good. Okay. Did you learn anything about The Simpsons from this special?
Yeah, I think the beauty of simple animation. Simpsons looked better than this, but it kind of set the blueprint for iconic looking characters. And again, like if you look at the Simpsons silhouettes, like they are kind of weird looking, and so were the Peanuts characters in a way. And yet they're both properties, both franchises are like considered very cute. But like if you'd never seen them before, I'm not sure that they were. But yeah, there's definitely a parallel there visually.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking definitely about that, just that commercial aspect of like Schultz and Groening and their willingness to kind of, merchandise, but also like at the same time, like this special is literally all about the commercialism of Christmas, and it's sponsored by Coca-Cola and came out of a Ford commercial, So anyway, just that sort of paradox felt very Simpsons adjacent to me. Does this special still have any juice for more Simpsons parodies?
Oh man, I think they've wrung this one dry. But it is so iconic. But again, like it's only because it's 25 minutes long. I think that they've gotten everything they could out of it. Maybe you start to sort of tap the other Peanut specials more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's another question related to that, too. Okay, are there any characters in this special that could become recurring Simpsons side characters?
I think, like, Linus could sort of be, like the problem is he's so sweet. Like, I could see him getting picked on like Martin Prince. Or...
Yes.
Well, I see Linus more as, like, a Lisa character. Like, the sort of young, kind of intelligent, like, wise beyond their years... I do agree with you, but yeah, I don't know that Linus gets. Well, I guess Lisa also gets teased a little bit, but
yeah, like or Pigpen too. Unfortunately, would just be like
yes,
the dirty kid, or like the kid nobody wants to be around, or like one of Cletus's kids, or something like that.
Oh yeah, Pigpen as Cletus's kid's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was gonna say Wendell would hang out with Pigpen, but yeah.
I like Pigpen's moment in this where I think it's like Lucy gives him a mirror or maybe it's the little redhead girl gives him a mirror and it's like, look at yourself, and he's like, I look better than I even thought. All right, are there any other specials, let's say, or movies by this director or in this franchise that The Simpsons should parody?
Have they done The Great Pumpkin?
I think they have. I think they did. They ended up doing that as like a Treehouse of Horror in an episode I admittedly have not seen. But I think they have done that one.
Yeah, and I mean the Thanksgiving one I think would be good to do as well. I admittedly don't remember too much about it, but I mean, come on, I think you got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, they could do more holiday stuff. It's funny they actually don't do that holidays that often in a show that's always like looking for more ideas. And maybe some holidays are easy to kind of, overdo pretty quickly. Like you can only do so many Valentine's Day episodes probably. But it does feel like they could do more with that. I was thinking about, there was an educational series called This Is America, Charlie Brown, where they like learn about American history in places, which feels like an absolute playground for, satire. So anyway.
Sponsored by MetLife.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that takes us to our final verdicts. Nate, Alan, what do you think? Do you think the strengths outweigh the weaknesses? Would you recommend this film?
I would absolutely recommend it. I would say that it probably would need a disclaimer for small children now, just to be like, now, sweetie, this is going to be a little slower than Bluey, or
a lot
just
slower,
a tad, or Paw Patrol, or insert children's program here. But I absolutely think it's worth watching, and it's so short. I think kids can take it.
Nate,
yeah. I feel like I'm coming around on it, and it's just, I guess, here's another Simpsons connection that came through for me. Just the attention to the craft of this special, right? The music, the voices, the animation style, even if it's maybe a little janky at times, but like it's so warm, it's so thoughtful, right? Just bringing together all of those elements into this like perfect little object feels very much like The Simpsons to me, and like the early days of like recruiting this team, right? This sort of like dream team with all these different skills and perspectives and visuals and music and writers and actors. Like it has that same magic. And so from that standpoint, I'd consider, not only watching it, but maybe also watch the documentary, because it gave me a lot of extra appreciation, I guess, for both the special and Peanuts in general. So I think that'd be my advice. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, look, a show does not withstand the test of time for 60 years if there's not something about it. And whether it's just the fact that the score is great or that, it has something to say, again, for me, it's not something I feel like I need to watch every single Christmas, which is, ironic because it's less than 30 minutes long. So it's pretty easy to squeeze in. But yeah, no, there's definitely something there. And, to Nate's earlier point, like this kicks off a series of Christmas specials. So it's, yeah, I think it holds an important place in sort of like the cultural history of what Christmas and pop culture looks like. So, and yeah, again, it is less than 30 minutes long. So it's not difficult to take it all in. So even if it's not like totally my favorite thing or necessarily always to my taste, I think from a cultural standpoint, it's very important. So I definitely would recommend it. We also like to sort of always offer extra credit, Alan, like, you could either do something that, maybe you'd pair this with it as a double feature, or, if you like this, check this out. Or if you didn't like this, maybe check this out instead. What is something you would offer as your sort of extra credit to go alongside this?
Charlie Brown Christmas and Die Hard. I think it kind of has to be Simpsons related. Like, I think you want to watch Charlie Brown Christmas and then you want to watch Simpsons roasting on an open fire. I think there's symmetry there that I think maybe people that hadn't thought about it would watch and find connections that, I don't know, are really special. Like those two things, they're the like two sort of titans of animation that,
totally.
or kind of cartoons that, I don't know. I think young people would get a kick out of comparing.
Yeah, it's funny because as we mentioned, I thought that was the episode we were watching for this. And so I watched about half of it before I was like, wait a minute, I'm watching the wrong episode. Yeah. And it's again,
also a Christmas special, but like the reference is like Bart mentions Charlie Brown at one point. It's like that. It's very straight, like simple,
But I kind of avoid season one because it's so different from the rest of the show that it's just not something that I normally rewatch. So I hadn't rewatched that special in, a very, very long time. And I was like kind of struck by just like, again, it is very different from what the show became, but like you can see the bones of what it's going to become in it. And yeah, there's something very, very special about that special. So I think that's a great suggestion. Nate,
Adam,
what about you? So again, I sort of referenced this earlier. I think like people should check out the episode of That 70s Show. It's called An Eric Foreman Christmas, season 4, episode 12. It will pair nicely because it really, I don't think I realized it at the time, but yeah, it is definitely riffing on the premise of, depressed guy tries to take on the Christmas pageant as a means to sort of cheer him up, and it doesn't work out that way.
Eric Foreman is a very Charlie Brown character, actually. In some ways.
He kind of is. He's kind of sad, sacky. But yeah, and then otherwise, again, I think for me, I was like, what is one of the Christmas things that I watch every single year without fail? And I alluded to it earlier. Christmas Vacation. I love that movie. I came to it very late. I didn't see it until like late high school, and then introduced it to my family, and it's become a family favorite. But there's something, again, Alan, you talk about tone and vibe. Like, that movie has no plot. It's literally just like a series of vignettes, but I really adore it. And it's maybe the last time Chevy Chase was funny. So, I have to recommend that. Nate, what about you?
Incidentally, Christmas Vacation, one of the few storing family like pieces of pop culture that we all engaged in, and
now
since I was a
that's
kid,
fascinating.
Isn't that fascinating? I
we
love
need
that
to
movie
unpack at a later date. Oh my goodness.
I would. So I would recommend It's a Wonderful Life, which we've covered on the podcast. Lots and lots of Simpsons connections there, but like for me, both that movie and this special are also riffing on A Christmas Carol, right?
Yep.
And just that kind of structure of like feeling, I guess, not really getting the spirit of Christmas and then finding the spirit of Christmas. And like,
right.
all three of these are like, 90% it's like sad and depressing and like unfortunate. All these bad things happen. And then the last 10% is like pure joy, right? And that is also, as we've talked about when we covered It's a Wonderful Life, that's a very Simpsons sort of structure as well, of like, it's just degradation and things just keep getting worse and the world's a terrible place. And then they turn it around in like the last scene when something sweet happens, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like you could really connect some dots by watching all of those things together.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, like, one of my favorite things that George Meyer said, and I'm going to paraphrase, but basically, like, that was the philosophy of the show. It was like, life is punishing, but you still have to put yourself out there and live, or you're giving up. And not every Simpsons episode ended with the most positive thing. Clearly, I mean, look at Miracle on Evergreen Terrace, but basically, it was the theme of just like pushing on when you can.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. A very Charlie Brown message.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Alan, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a fascinating conversation. Your book is fantastic. Again, I cannot recommend it enough to the listeners of our show, especially for listeners like or for people like Nate and I who have loved The Simpsons for as long as we can remember, but obviously we're kind of too young to really appreciate it in its heyday. Your book has really provided a context that I don't think we've ever really fully understood necessarily, because again, like, we're as old as the show. I think the book does a great job of really like contextualizing its place in the culture and what it was like at the time. So highly, highly recommend it. Is there anything else you wanna plug, where people can find you, stuff like that?
So first of all, thank you guys for having me on. A true pleasure. I could talk about this stuff for 10 hours, so thank you. You can buy the book anywhere, and I would say bookshop.org is a fun option because it helps connect you with an independent bookstore. And you can find my work at theringer.com and on social media, Alan Siegel, LA.
And we should say the name of the book one last time.
Yes,
because everyone's just like, your book, that book, my book. Stupid TV, Be More Funny. You all should go buy it. It's fantastic. Thank you so much again, Alan.
Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Springfield Googleplex, the movie podcast for Simpson fans. If you enjoyed what you heard, please leave us a review and share this episode with the Simpson fans and film buffs in your life. We've also set up a support page on our website where, if you want, you can throw us a couple of bucks to help cover the cost of making this show. We really do appreciate it. And until next time, Nate,
We'll see you around the Plex.
Happy Halloween, everybody!
Alan, thank you, man.
No, thank you.
This
Thank
has
you.
been
Awesome.
such a joy. Like I think this has been one of our best episodes so far.
Oh, really?
And
You guys
truly,
are great. Like I think the tough thing for me was like, I don't know. I tended to do a lot of digressions. So it's like, oh, I'm going to talk about this thing and that thing and that thing. And it's like, God,
Unlike Adam, who's always
yeah, I'm laser focused.
no, I don't know. It's,
Well, let's put it this way. Nate writes a very solid outline for all of these episodes, and
Yeah.
if we didn't have it, the show would never end because my inability to stay on track.
Yeah.
So yes.
yeah. By the way, there's one thing I forgot to say was I think Mike Scully, like based, it's not this episode actually, it's Marge Be Not Proud. Like he based that on like a shoplifting incident from his own childhood.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a crazy,
So,